Hi, everyone around the world. Well, it's now official. Today, August 18th, 2021, the Biden administration with the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta have announced that in the past 2 weeks in the United States, from August 3rd to August 17th, 2021, new COVID cases have risen 52%. New COVID deaths in the United States have risen 87% as the dangerous and highly contagious Delta variant moves rapidly through the unvaccinated. Further, the CDC reported today that some Americans will be eligible for COVID booster shots beginning a month from now, starting September 20th, 2021. COVID booster shots will be available to people who received the 2 Pfizer or 2 Moderna vaccines 8 months previously in January 2021. The one-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine is still being evaluated about producing a booster for it as well. The first groups of people eligible for the booster shot in late September are healthcare workers, nursing home residents, and older adults above 60, unless that age is revised. The booster for Pfizer and Moderna is now very important because the CDC says, quote, "We are starting to see evidence of reduced protection against mild and moderate disease," close quote. That means the number of COVID cases now that are breakthroughs in previously vaccinated people is increasing as the Delta COVID variant continues to speed through human populations. Also, Prime Minister announced that a nationwide lockdown has been ordered there as an increasing number of new Delta variant COVID cases have been confirmed after New Zealand had first managed to keep case numbers low. But this new lockdown will cover the entire country of New Zealand for at least the next 3 days. One of their problems now is that only 21% of the New Zealand population has been vaccinated. Meanwhile, about 243 million miles from Earth's COVID pandemic, on Mars, the little helicopter Ingenuity is still flying missions to explore around the Perseverance rover in the Jezero crater. In fact, on August 10th, a week ago, the media group Aviation Week awarded NASA's Ingenuity Mars helicopter with a 2021 Laureate Award honoring extraordinary achievements in aerospace, specifically recognizing the Pioneer rotorcraft for its history-making flights on the Red Planet. And here is the Martian South Pole with its ice cap. And in this is a Martian South Pole image in which you can see lots of dots, green dots, red dots, yellow dots, and they represent sites where there have been bright radar reflections spotted by the European Space Agency's Mars Express orbiter over this south polar cap. And such bright reflections were first interpreted as subsurface liquid water. Back in 2018, Italian scientist Roberto Orese and his team reported radar evidence of subsurface lakes deep below the Martian southern ice cap. But because there are so many glinting spots, scientists began to wonder if maybe they were something else. Now experts are arguing about whether Mars might have enough hidden water to make 3 underground lakes, as some have wondered, and was hypothesized back in 2018. And one of the NASA, JPL, Caltech, and University of Arizona arguments is that water warm enough to be liquid on the surface of Mars would last only a few moments before turning into vapor in the thin Martian air. So the bright radar reflection dots might be clays, as shown in this image, and not water ice. This detailed photo was taken by NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter of ice sheets at the Martian South Pole. The spacecraft detected clays nearby the ice, clays that were previously interpreted to be liquid water. It's important to know what is clay and what is water ice, because where there's water, there's usually life. And that's the official stated goal of the Perseverance and Ingenuity mission, to look for evidence of past or present life on Mars. NASA now reports, quote, radar signals which can penetrate rock and ice change as they are reflected off different materials. In this case, they produced especially bright signals beneath the Martian south polar cap that could be interpreted as liquid water. The possibility of a potentially habitable environment for microbes was exciting. But after taking a closer look at the data, along with experiments in a cold laboratory here on Earth, some scientists now think that it's clays, not water, that might be creating all of those signals. If that's true, there might not be 3 liquid lakes beneath the Martian South Pole, close quote. Okay, now back to Earth. I would like to go back 8 years to late 2012 to January 2013. I was then keeping track of 24 different regions in the United States where residents kept reporting mysterious, loud, crashing, metallic, or boom sounds, sometimes at the same moment with a bright flash of light. Local authorities could never find the source of the booms or metallic sounds or of the bright flashes of light. Like this security camera recording on January 5th, 2013, at 1:30 a.m. in Salem, Massachusetts, that the local weather service confirmed for me it was a dry, clear night. And please remember that Salem, Massachusetts, the flash of light that preceded right before that really, really loud boom banging sound. Well, late in 2012, residents southwest of Providence in Warwick, Rhode Island, they were shaken in their houses and buildings by a loud bang that some described as sounding, quote, like the beginning of a war, close quote. Physicist Jeffrey Braun, PhD at the University of Evansville in Indiana, who had been involved in some investigations, told reporters, quote, at this point, nobody seems to know. The geologists say it's not in the ground. The Air Force says it's not in the air. And the astronomers say it's not from space. So we're running out of options, close quote. Since then, I have produced 204 reports in my Earthfiles News website. This is an archive list, partial, about these mysterious unexplained booms. You just click on the search button at earthfiles.com and type in booms. Many of the reports have original security camera recordings of the unexplained sounds. Well, this year of 2021, I have so far received mysterious boom reports from Arkansas, Missouri, southeastern Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, across the Atlantic Ocean to Manchester, England, Tucson, Arizona, and now comes more boom mystery from Glendale, Arizona, a suburb of Phoenix. Recently, I talked with a retired member of a Washington, D.C. think tank who recently reported to me very loud booms that he and his neighbors heard the night of July 10th, 2021, this past month, in their Glendale, Arizona houses, a suburb of Phoenix. His name, with permission, is Stephen Thompson. In the 1980s, out of college and in his 20s, he began work for 3 U.S. generals in Washington, D.C., involved with a think tank during the Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr.'s Strategic Defense Initiative, also known as SDI. The think tank was called High Frontier, and Stephen Thompson worked most for General Daniel O'Graham. Stephen Thompson recently sent me a detailed email about how stunned he and his neighbors were on July 10th by the loud bangs and booms that woke them up in different houses from sound sleep in the dark early morning of July 10th, 2021.
So I went to bed at approximately 1:30 a.m. on Saturday, the 10th of July, and I armed my home security system, which I always do. I fell asleep, and then at approximately 2:25, I was startled by booms that were so loud. Each made such a distinct resonant vibration that was unlike anything really I'd ever experienced. I thought I heard a couple booms go off first. Then I thought to myself that this is not fireworks or gunshots, because I was in the Army National Guard. I grew up in Pennsylvania, where we all on it as a way of life. So I'm quite familiar with what gunshots sound like, and this was not. I really could not get a solid count of the number of booms, but I know it had to be at least 6 or 7 total. One neighbor said he thought it was more. For myself, after the first 2 and quickly trying to assess what was happening, I opened my eyes and I sat up in bed, and then another 2 booms went off, which set off the motion sensor lights that are attached to my interior walls. The French doors in my bedroom, open to the back courtyard, really rattled. My 2 cats, which are not generally spooked by the fireworks on the 4th or New Year's Eve around here, they first jumped off the bed, and then I saw them hunker down hard and close to the floor until it resonated up, while it also felt like above us at the same time. And then my cats ran scared.
Meaning the cats went flat to the floor.
Oh, flat to the floor. I've never seen them. I mean, I've seen my cats or any cat, you know how they get a little spooked, but this was like prone to the floor. And it was just very difficult to distinguish whether it was coming from below, above, around. I was really trying to figure out what directions the booms were coming from. I felt like they came in waves, pulses. I thought at times it was above the roof, and then I thought it could have been from my backyard, the courtyard, located right outside my bedroom French doors. The sounds were more than booms. They sounded like more of an incredibly loud clap, sharpness to them with kind of an underlying bass or heavy vibration at the same time. It made me think of 2 large iron skyscraper girders being swung hard and fast against one another.
Wow.
And it was as if the incredible vibrations were coming from both above and around the outside of my house. Once or twice I felt them coming from below. Anyhow, I got up and got one of my guns, and I peeked out the back, but I didn't see anything. I checked the security cameras then from my computer, and although they started recording in front of the house outside at the time of the booms, they showed nothing. No flashes, no debris. And then after that, I went outside and I looked around in the back and the front. I didn't hear police emergency sirens, so I just figured all was okay, and I went back inside. And I went to bed around 3 a.m. So I was up for about an hour and a half trying to figure out what was going on. The morning, which would still be the 10th, I saw 2 of my neighbors across the street and down 2 houses from me. So I walked over and I asked John if he heard the strange loud noises overnight. He said he did hear them at the same time that I did. But this is weird because he said they were outside of his bedroom on his back patio above his roof. We have the same floor plan layout in our houses. He thought I was mistaken that it could have come behind my house because he felt for sure when he heard them that they were coming from the back.
And that goes to the heart of your confusion in the bedroom when you weren't sure whether it was coming from above or below. You weren't sure if it was coming from in front or in back. And Steve, this is one of the most common parts of this mystery since 2011. How many people that I have talked to who have said, I thought it was above. My husband thought it was from below. And people get disoriented about what is exactly happening. And one Navy captain in Boca Raton, Florida, called me about 2 years ago. And he said it was a compression wave, and it only came to the back corner of my house with a loud boom, and then it was over.
Well, it's very similar. And at the time that it occurred, it just kind of gives you goose pimples.
Do you think that there is something about an entire decade of these phenomena of booms, metallic crashing sounds, as your neighbors reported they heard, and the trumpets that might relate to other intelligences operating technologies on our planet?
Well, I think it's possible. I kind of wonder if it isn't some sort of military technology program. And since I'm close to Luke Air Force Base, I wondered about that as well. Is it otherworldly? It just didn't seem very earthly. I don't know.
Yeah. One of your neighbors, she described the sound that she heard as, quote, mysterious as if two iron skillets were being thrown at one another.
To me, it sounded like the iron girders, which is pretty similar.
It had that metallic crashing sound to it.
Yes, and she swore that it was coming from out back of her property. And she also looked out. Everybody had gone outside and looked. Now, what's interesting with John and Dawn across the street is his housemate has the bedroom in the front. She heard and felt it, and she screamed for help because it was late, and her window rattled so hard that she thought somebody was actually trying to break in. So she says, no, John, it's coming from the front. And he says, no, Dawn, it's coming from the back. And I'm saying, well, no, it couldn't come from your back. It had to be coming from my back. And then the neighbor down the street, she said that she heard the same sound. She felt them. She said it scared her, and it was mysterious and otherworldly and spooky. When I was doing my work and research and academics in D.C., there were two generals that also worked at FBI. I overheard them speak with a lieutenant colonel and their science advisor. And he was a gentleman who was rather senior at that time in 89, 90, 91. They made mention about the orbs in World War II that the Allied pilots would see over Germany when they were bombing.
Known as Foo Fighters.
Foo Fighters, correct. And this is what was weird. I asked somebody about this later. They said the Greeks had it right. And they were talking about the gods, the Greek gods, which we're all aware of growing up, but we take them as myth and metaphor. I thought, what do they mean by that? And I would dig further and talk to people. I'm convinced that our government is very well aware, as I'm sure the Soviets and Chinese are as well.
Yeah.
There's more information they're not telling us, and I don't think it can be hidden much longer. I also think it might be what's going on with this whole global reset. But what I heard them talk about was cycles. The Earth goes through these cataclysms. I don't know what it is, but it goes through these cycles of birth and resurrection and death and resurrection and death, and that the government would take this serious enough to have to redact.
What did you think that the generals meant when they said, quote, Greeks had it right? What is the it they had right?
I don't think that these generals believed they were us. I think they believed that they were
ETs.
Yes. And I heard at the time from different people about being ETs, that there had been contact. Now this information comes out more and more and more. You actually have people that are taking it seriously. And how can you not? More people are becoming aware, and they're asking questions.
And the very sound and video that I wanted you to have in your minds to listen to this fascinating interview with Mr. Thompson is the one from Salem, Massachusetts. And Brad discovered that it was off and that the sound and the video were trying to play when I was trying to introduce. So right now, because it's important, Brad, play the Salem boom. And I remember when I was sent that video, that immediately I thought, well, gosh, it's at the East Coast, that's lightning, it's some kind of close-up weird thunder. But I do like to check I's and T's, so I did get a hold of the Weather Service, and that in that specific area of Salem, Massachusetts, on that night, early morning, it was clear, it was dry, there was no thunderstorm activity within any vicinity. And the reason why I bring that up is because right from the very beginning of my first investigations back in 2011, there would be people saying, I don't know what it was, but it was a flash of light and it lighted up the entire wall of my bedroom. But there was no storm. I got up and walked around. What was the boom? So whatever this phenomena is, whether it's trying to mimic, in some cases, something, or whatever goes with the generation of this strange boom, bang, sometimes metallic, sometimes trumpet-like sound that is so peculiar that the very fact that there might be some blast of light before, during, or after, I think it's significant to keep on top of how many places. So now with that, and having heard, which I personally think, and Whitley Strieber thinks, is one of the best recordings of the strange sounds of this past decade in that Salem tape that has never been explained, and then you come back to Phoenix, and you realize what Stephen Thompson and his neighbors, that they had something that rattled their windows, their walls. The energy was very, very strong. And it is still unresolved, and that these events are happening in many, many, many places in our entire planet. So from there, what I want to do is invite all of you who may have an experience in this category or know somebody who does to let me know, because there are so many aspects of, who knows, dramatic climate swings, all of the things that are happening. Are we in a revolutionary time that is being controlled by other forces? And if we were paying more attention and keeping more data, would we begin to see a bigger picture if we were all working together? And in that way, I'm asking for anybody who has had recent reports that might be like Stephen Thompson's or like the Salem, Massachusetts, and go through earthfiles.com, look at all of the reports that are in my huge, extensive archive. It is really quite a fascinating phenomenon. And no, it is not explained by planes going through the sound barrier. So now, one of the most recent emails that I got just recently this week, without them knowing that this is what I would be covering tonight, this is from someone also in Arizona. And it says, we are hearing sounds in central Arizona over the last week, including yesterday. And this is an email that I found from Ian forwarding today. So this is something that has happened this week, and I hope to connect with them, and then I'll follow up with information from them if it's in these categories. Then, just yesterday, the KTAR TV in Phoenix, on top of all these booms, headlines that storm tears through Metro Phoenix, high winds bring down trees. Thousands of homes were without power after a monsoon storm ripped through the valley late Monday. Trees came down and streets flooded as some areas absorbed over an inch of rain. And then KTAR continues with one Phoenix resident who told them on camera, "This was the worst wind I have ever seen, and I've been here 35 years. His name is Mike Evans." And he then continued saying, "I live near 44th Street and Indian School Road in Phoenix. After the horrible wind, then the rain fell. It was like a hurricane, and I've been in hurricanes before." Another example of the dramatic swinging of weather that is happening around the whole world. And then I received something very nice this week. It was a copy of a tweet. And the tweet came from John William Warner IV, who has a UFO page. And he wrote to me, quote, "Linda, I just wanted to say thank you for the 40 plus years of hard work you've done. My mother, Catherine Mellon." I just stop here for a moment to explain. Catherine Mellon is in the family of Chris Mellon, who once worked on sensitive matters for the Pentagon and is now a close colleague of Luis Elizondo, who has worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency as an expert in counterintelligence and was the director of the Advanced Aerial Threat Identification Program in the Pentagon, also known as ATIP, between 2007 to 2012, at least officially. Lou Elizondo spoke out about UFO UAPs since the congressional 180-day countdown this year to letting American congressional representatives and the public know more about unidentified aerial phenomena that haunts this planet and our solar system and beyond. And he and I and others this Friday, August 20th, and Saturday, August 21st, will be panelists in a Zoom conference called Making Contact Convergence. They are using Alan Steinfeld's Making Contact title from the book, to which I and others contributed. And this will be running, at least in Mountain Time for me, 4 to 6 p.m., and then in all other time zones that match 4 to 6 p.m. Mountain. And I will, after my broadcast tonight, I will put up ticket information at earthfiles.com and hope a lot of you will come. There will be Whitley Strieber and myself and then Luis Elizondo and others on Saturday. We're going to be covering some complex topics. So I hope that those of you who like to come to the Earthfiles YouTube channel will seek out Making Contact Convergence and check in to what we're doing live in Zoom. Nothing is, or at least not in my group, we're not prepared. We are active live panelists. Now, continuing with John Warner's recent August 14th tweet, which I'm sure you've been reading, but I'll go over the quote because I wanted to contribute something more. I really appreciate this tweet. Quote, "My mother, Catherine Mellon, bought me your Alien Harvest book in 1981, and that was my first book in Alien Harvest about all my animal mutilation investigations with hard evidence and It is in many ways an evidentiary book about the eyewitness testimonies of seeing animals go up in beams of light and the whole link to other technology and to non-humans in the animal mutilations, an alien harvest that I did as a book for the first time it came out was in 1989. And that's the reference. And that it was very nice to learn that Catherine Mellon got an alien harvest for him, the writer, and that it continues. She bought me your book, An Alien Harvest, and it wasn't in 1981. I did it later, but a lot of people think of it because I was working on A Strange Harvest, 79 to 80. And A Strange Harvest and An Alien Harvest sort of the titles get crossed. But An Alien Harvest came out in 1989. And he says, and I was hooked forever. And some of her, meaning his mother, some of her cattle were mutilated in Colorado at the time. My dad, a U.S. senator, said it was a hoax, close quote. And I believe that John Warner's meaning from his father's hoax comment is about the somewhat schizophrenic policies of our government since World War II the government has known a great deal about other intelligences and their advanced aerial craft and other technologies, and they knew from the early 60s at least on that the bloodless, trackless harvests of blood and tissue from animals around the world and the harvest of sperm and eggs from humans around the world were other creatures interacting with this planet. So what law enforcement and the government came up with was a convenient way to deny that any of it had anything to do with anything else but, as they always said, it was like a mantra. The causes can be disease, predator, or satanic cults. That was the constant mantra from when I got into it in '79. But after 40 some years now, I think all of you who joined me for these Wednesday Earthfiles YouTube channel broadcasts, you know how preposterous the official phony denials are, and that the mantra that is repeated is trying to counteract the huge truth that we are not alone in this universe. And that maybe it's because governments and military and the power brokers all feel it's way too complicated. It's way beyond the comprehension of humble humans. And it's too complicated to tell the truth that this universe is teeming with consciousness, and that some consciousness are, were, will be Greek gods. Humans deserve the whole truth about who our progenitors are, what their agendas are with Earth, and who out there within 10 to 20, 30 light years from our sun, who is friendly, who is neutral, who is hostile, and why in any one of those cases. I welcome hearing from any of you with firsthand military, science, medical, or other firsthand knowledge about the other intelligences that are so well known to classified sections of our government, or about other intelligence that are based or interacting with other parts of our solar system as well as Earth. And with this presentation tonight, I am going to segue over to Ian Holling with the hope of receiving your questions and trying to answer and have great patience with the fact that we got started a little late. We had the technical problem on the Salem boom, but that I would like to go an extra 10 or 15 so we have a whole half hour for your questions and answers, if that's okay with you. So, Ian.
Hi, Linda. We've got super chats to go through, first of all. Thank you very much for the generosity from everybody, quite a few here. Moonbird, Stephen Carrier, Gay Mail, Adam Ambrose UFO, Rachel Darley Hug, Thought on Fire 222, Dave Goodridge, Green Starbeam, Eric Ackley, Sergeant Cadet, Teresa Bass, Courtney C, Annabelle Solon, Whisper of Love, Sexy Sadie, Mary Kelly, Welma Nosori, and anyone who I've missed out. Thank you very much.
Oh, I thank you with humility and the closing of hands, which to me always means we are all linked. We are all linked in this universe that is entangled with light, and that this is what we are struggling for, is truth that comes through the thought that dwells in the light. And this, to me, is what that means. That's why I do that. To all of you, I love you for all of your communications, your super chats, everything. It's like we are in a growing bead that needs to grow around the whole world with truth. So thank you so much. And Ian, what have we got for some questions?
Quite a lot of comments. A lot of people have been sending in their own experiences of the booms and loud noises and sounds that they've heard.
Great.
I've got one here from Glendale, Arizona. They heard it last night between 9:30 p.m. and 10 p.m. It sounded like a metallic crashing sound. Another one.
This was in Glendale as well?
Yep, this is from Glendale, Arizona.
And this was which date? Last night?
Last night, between 9:30 and 10 p.m.
Wow. And I can get the name and hopefully a phone number from you or people who have written this in. This would be very important to follow up because the Glendale, Arizona that I presented tonight through Stephen Thompson was July 10th. That would mean that a month later, on the 18th of August, that it sounds like something along the same strange lines.
That's right. It's Von0906. That's their handle in the chat. So perhaps they could contact us directly at earthfiles@earthfiles.com.
Yes, I would like to look for your email, and if you can provide a phone number confidentially, I would like to follow up, because what does this rash of these strange metallic booms that cannot be linked to any kind of evidence? There is nothing. You could tell that Stephen Thompson is a thorough and intelligent person, and he spent a lot of time looking for, could there be debris? Was it some kind of unknown firecracker? And nothing. And the other people in the neighborhood looked as well. So there's no sign of any physical debris, and yet the energy was so great on the structure of these houses. What would be doing that? If any of you have actual inside military or science knowledge about why these would be, I guess I want to say why for a decade, have these similar kinds of booms, metallic banging, the trumpet sounds, why? What is going on? And if it is nothing to do with Earth, then what is happening in the other realms interacting with our planet that would be causing this for a decade in all these different parts of the planet? I welcome your communications. And Chocolate has joined us. I tried to have him be with me at the top. Well, he's come and he's now joined me. So
I have another one here, Linda. I live on the Navajo Nation. Now, this is Arizona, Four Corners, northwest of Gallup, New Mexico. I was fast asleep at 4:33 a.m. this morning when I thought I heard a loud boom and my ceiling shook.
And this was Gallup, New Mexico.
Northwest of Gallup in the Four Corners area of Arizona, yeah.
Yeah, and if that person can please confidentially provide me a phone number to get in touch. I would like for us to all be more interactive as best we can when there are these kinds of events that keep taking place over a period of time. The more we are aware, the more that you hear and you don't feel embarrassment, there's no reason to try to report something like this. Because what if it is adding up or increasing or heading toward something else that other people might have knowledge about in the science community? I sure would like to know. Okay, what we got next?
Okay, Linda, following on from the events in Afghanistan, can you tell us anything about the ancient technology that the US might have wanted from Afghanistan and Iraq in 2001 onwards?
I was watching CNN live when our troops went into the Baghdad museum. And I remember distinctly hearing a reporter voice say, it has something like, I have either been told or I have heard. It was not a verifiable, here we've got a document. It was one of those in the throes of all of that explosive event that was taking place, that the reporter, it would be like me on an assignment saying, I have just heard from that American troops are going down beneath the museum to go through an entrance that will go through 30 miles. I know this doesn't seem possible, but I remember 30 miles of tunnels under Baghdad. And what they are looking for is biblical described technologies. And the top of that list would probably be the Ark of the Covenant, wouldn't you think, Ian?
Right, that's always the top one.
Yeah, and that, I remember it, and I remember being stunned. And then I remember looking on the computer for more information about American forces going into the Baghdad Museum in order to go through some entrance to get into these 30 tunnels to look for ancient technology that would include the Ark of the Covenant, whatever it really was, a weapon, an energy system, whatever. So that to me is one of the live that I heard myself reportings that made me wonder, what is it about Mesopotamia, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, and all the surrounding regions? It has always been the heart of competition and war and fighting. Why? And the only thing that right now that I personally am trying to explore a great deal more in are what are considered to be credible books, translations of the Anunnaki. Whatever the Anunnaki were, wherever they were from, they were not classical Homo sapiens sapien. And if the Anunnaki were our progenitors, they had bird and reptilian features. They're in some of the carved statues. Does that mean that the Anunnaki were, as some writers have said, reptilian-based extraterrestrial biological entities? Or are they an intermediary from a progenitor of them? How big is this Russian doll within a Russian doll within a Russian doll? And it becomes relevant to me in many ways. I think today on planet Earth, that hybridization by other intelligences and genetic manipulation is happening on our planet, along with Barbara Lamb and others who she was a contributor or a co-author on Meet the Hybrids. Well, if this planet has been used for 10,000, 2 million, 270 million years as advanced intelligences working on planets where it is essentially a ready-made laboratory of water and certain temperature, and that there have been a cascade of all kinds, including all of the age of dinosaurs that were then wiped out, and then came mammals, and we're in that category, and here we are now. Is it possible in the 21st century for Homo sapiens sapien to be introduced to the progenitor who set in motion the genetic manipulation of already evolving primates on this planet, and that we are the current model from that work? I'm convinced that is the truth. The question is, which ones exactly? And then who do they compete with and fight with? And as the Defense Intelligence Agency analyst told me in December of 1999, Linda, our government has proof that 270 million years ago, 3 competing extraterrestrial civilizations were in conflict here over this planet. And that in 270 million years, there has been all kinds of genetic manipulation as a byproduct of that conflict. And he described them to me as tall Nordics, short, gray, artificial intelligence that is either under the direction of or is in collaboration with tall, 7 to 8 foot tall, very, very thin gray-skinned beings that may be biological or cyborgs, combination of computer and organic. And the third category that I remember the DIA analyst said to me, the third category, they are the big reptilians, and from their point of view, they own Earth, that they were here first. And I remember feeling almost weary, overcome by the idea that if we all knew the whole truth, and we have always expected that intelligences beyond Earth would always be more advanced, more intelligent, hopefully more spiritual, and it may be, as above, so below, that the Earth that we inhabit right now, that is going through so much revolution and strife and discomfort, death in our faces, as I read about the issue of Apollo and Zeus, and the sense that Stephen Thompson got in his discussions with think tank people, that this is a planet or a solar system, maybe just Earth, but that there are always cycles of death and resurrection, death and resurrection. What would cause that? If it is introduced from the outside by physics abilities that we humans don't understand, or at least the general public has not been allowed to understand, and if our power brokers and military leaders understand we are babies, and that those which compete for Earth, for the moon, for the rest of the solar system and beyond, that they are, as one man said to me, it isn't, Linda, just 3D. And it isn't just 4D holograms. He said there are 5D consciousness. And the 5D consciousness can shapeshift, can manipulate any and all atom and molecules to create anything that it wants, including this universe with what is in this universe, for reasons that are probably incomprehensible to human minds. But nevertheless, he said, unless you accommodate the fact that it isn't just three-dimensional, it isn't just four-dimensional holographic projection, it's fifth-dimensional control at the atomic level of consciousness that can take any form that it wants. And that particular person came from quite a complex background and ended up saying, and it reminds me of what I was sharing with you tonight about the Greeks. I was told back in the early 80s that the so-called Greek gods were extraterrestrial biological entities. And if the avatars of history were also 5D, the Greek gods were 5D, the avatars could be 5D, it would explain literal scenes left to us in historic books, and this one you would recognize, I think, where the avatar, Christ, goes to a hill and a lot of people follow, and they are hungry and thirsty, and he is able to metaphorically wave his hand and arm, and then in came wine and bread and fish to feed the people, like the holodeck in Star Trek. The holodeck was the ability to take atoms and molecules and push buttons and create whatever they wanted, whether it was food or whether it was an article, whatever it was. That 5D is a big part of what the true huge big picture is. And it may be that when Michael Talbot released in the early 1990s the book, A Holographic Universe, and told Bud Hopkins that he had channeled, he brought that book down from ETs who had been abducting him since he was a child, and that the truth was we are in a holographic universe that is being projected by other plural intelligences. And now what's being added in 2021 are abductees who are coming forth. They recognize that as a theme that they have been introduced to in recent abductions. But they add the part that the beings who have now created this universe as a holographic experiment of some sort, they are in a bigger universe. And they are projecting through a very specific piece of this universe which they have made as a holographic universe, consistent with what Michael Talbot wrote in his famous book. But up until now, all of these to me were almost like pieces, like you are walking along a long, long path, and you find a red crystal, and you find a black stone, and you find quartz, and you find all of these different pieces as you walk along the path, but you just can't figure out how they all fit. Well, today, for the first time in 2021, it's beginning to come together in my mind that the one big box that hadn't been much considered by normal people before is is the very difficult concept that we are in a universe that is being projected, perhaps by 5D minds, for some currently incomprehensible reason, and that we are 3D, 4D relationships, but our minds and our souls seem to be the part that may have a link into the infinite, and maybe part of this huge, huge test has something to do with that which is 5D in the realm of quote-unquote gods, that can create a holographic universe, put avatars and all kinds of consciousness in it, but that the fundamental goal is, if you put consciousness from 4D by 5D into 3D organic beings in a holographic universe, what happens? What is the relationship of the organic to the inorganic and to all of the other frequencies that would be around us if you are trying to understand from 2D to 5D what works best, what works worst, what can you do with this universe that you can't do with this universe? And there is something strangely comforting to me about beginning to think in these kinds of terms and try to share them with audiences that come back to me with your own dreams, your own thoughts, that you are and have been for a long time touched by information that has come to you, whether it's something face to face or a dream or an image or whatever it is. That when you start scratching the surface of humanity, more and more people than I would ever imagine, you would ever imagine, they really don't have a lot of problems with some of these concepts because they've already been introduced to it in their life. So, in an odd way, as we're all feeling that the world is now more revolutionary than it's ever been for a long time, and that things seem to be moving pell-mell, like there's a part of the timeline, it has to come to something, like something is pushing or hooking together. I have more of a feeling of a certain kind of protection that is there behind all of the front scenes, that is trying very hard for humanity to be embraced and understand the embrace of the light and to go in that direction. And that if we end up being on a planet that out of duress and pandemics and wars and all of the problems that we wish would go away, maybe something is trying to push us to a place in the timeline where there will not be death before another resurrection. Maybe this is a really strange and difficult lab experiment with somebody trying to help us, because what they want to survive is our souls. That's our link to the infinity that Roger Penrose said to me so beautifully in that interview that I've mentioned before. Linda, it isn't just a beginning in a singularity. It's a cycle and cycle and cycle and cycle through infinity. There's something strangely comforting about that. I welcome your feedback. And Ian, I can take one more question.
Linda, we got so many questions backing up. Can we do another Q&A with
What?
them all another time?
Yeah, but let's go ahead. Now I've
Sure.
heard that. Let's go to 9.
Sure. Okay. Do you know
Thank you,
anything
you
about
guys.
law, the contact and the law of one, the law of contact and the law of one?
I have a glancing information because I've talked with a lot of abductees who have been referenced to the law of one when the abductees have talked to people in therapy or hypnotherapists because they were introduced by, whether they were with Greys, not so much reptilians, but mostly if they were with Greys or the Nordics or the red hairs, the tall humanoids. And these are people who were either shown like a movie going through right here. The screen is right out here. And depending on which non-human consciousness you are dealing with, it can be a series of movies. Literally, I've heard this now from military people, abductees, scientists. And the movies are moving actually quite rapidly, and they can have gold symbols as if the symbols are raised up by black drop shadow above the movies, as if there are layers of information coming into the human mind. And when that happens, and then you go into hypnosis, like in my 2-volume book, Glimpses of Other Realities, that 106-page chapter in volume 2 is a good example of how complex the communications can be with human beings by the non-humans we've been talking about. Very complex. A lot of images here. Well, if you took all of the work of all of the people in a two-way street, scientists or others working with trying to help people in the abduction syndrome, and you then summarized what are the bottom lines that come to our fellow human beings who appear case to case to case, often to have details that only people who have been abducted would know how to describe. And that one of the overlying themes that has come through the abduction is this universe, if we understood it, is entirely entangled. That our consciousness, the consciousness of chocolate, the consciousness of a beautiful lion in Africa, to the cetaceans in the oceans, going out 10 light years to Epsilon Eridani, where there are supposed to be very advanced insect beings 1,000 years in advance of us, supposedly hostile. Go another 3 light years and you get to Procyon A and B, and they're supposed to be tall blondes. You go to the Sirius A and B, it's supposed to be tall, blonde humanoids. But in terms of all of the different humans who have interacted with all of these different types, one of the more consistent themes, the most important part of us humans, is our soul that is connected to the entangled fabric of this particular universe, and that the consciousness with a big C of every single frequency in this universe is also linked to our soul, to our mind-body complex, through perhaps what Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff were hypothesizing back in 2014. There was a discovery of microtubules in the human brain, and their theory was that the purpose of those tubules, microscopic tubules, could be to vibrate in this universe that is linked, and that ultimately the best description of this universe and us eventually is the protonoia in the Nag Hammadi, which says and refers to the thought that dwells in the light. Think about it, that every single photon, we would get 186,000 miles a second, would be like an infinite number of nerve centers all hooked together, so that eventually, if we ever fully understand this holographic universe, we will begin to understand that the entire interstitial, down to Planck's constant, is the thought that dwells in the light. The universe itself has consciousness. Consciousness to consciousness is the whole key. And some of the non-humans are telepathic. And in their telepathy, the communication is rapid to a human. Tremendous numbers of images, symbols overlaying. There are people who are very empathic, and they can get a flash. And it could be that something is 50 feet away and they can't see it with photons coming into their eyes, but their mind can pick it up and they can see. And then it used to be that people who had these abilities that are described by the question's subject, the law of one. In a way, all of these phrases, the law of one, an entangled universe, the thought that dwells in the light, that infinity is the reality of the size, which means it never ends, and that's what Roger Penrose said. It's just cycles and cycles and cycles through infinity. The change that I'm feeling from all of your emails, letters, handwritten letters, periodically some phone calls, but mostly in what you write. I am seeing for the first time in my professional career so many of you with experiences that seem to be related to the non-matter. It may be that this revolutionary time that feels like it's got to catch up with something in the timeline, avoid something in the timeline, jump to another place in the timeline, something is really trying to shake this up. If we as a species, without social and political separations, or sexual and physical separations, or all of the things that can separate, if we were shown by a benign, advanced consciousness, something in a hologram like walking into Star Trek holodeck, only to show us, okay, here's what happened here on the Earth 4 billion years ago. Here's what happened 2 billion years ago. Here is what happened 270 million years ago. Here's where you come in. Here is what we're doing over on Procyon B. Here's what we're doing. And we just got an absolute briefing, a whole briefing. The one thing I think that humans would then understand, we are worth fighting for existence, and that there are intelligences out there who are trying to help us, no matter how many others want Earth and want us off of it, which is where I think this is one of the problems. And that we have a huge, we'll call it cosmic geopolitical dilemma for us all to understand. And why I feel that we have got to be told all of the truth as soon as possible so that we become stronger in our education, not afraid in our separation. The law of one, even though I'm not quoting from it, and even though it's been a long time since I read it or read parts of it, I think that everything that I have been trying to share with you about entanglement, infinity, the thought that dwells in the light, that the fabric of photons are the infinite canvas. It's the same concept. It all is one huge consciousness playing out, maybe has no number, all the different universes and all the different consciousnesses, because it wants to see if inorganic, organic, 3D, 4D, 5D, will they ultimately choose that thought that dwells in the light, not the dark that seems to be pitted in so many levels as if the theater of evil versus good, light versus dark, love versus hate, that all of that is being played out like a theatrical production, I guess as a learning tool for our souls. And eventually, maybe, death within 70 or 80 years will not be the average on Earth, and that already we are hearing about companies that want to produce a pill that you would pay some sum for, and it would guarantee you 150 years of healthy organic life. And then you would transition on. Earth is in revolution in a huge cosmos of the single consciousness of all that can ever be, at the same time that you and I on this beautiful planet are trying to understand how we make it to next year, 3 years, 10 years, on a planet where we have not had been educated well in terms of taking care of this planet as a living entity that can sustain us and other living creatures, and that we need each other badly, and that we will lose Earth if we do not educate ourselves faster and faster about how we can be on a planet like this and live with all of the creatures which help sustain every part of this planet, and not have any more burning of millions of square miles, not having any more of the terrible, terrible bacteria in water that kill so many beautiful ocean animals. And I feel that the thought that dwells in the light is pulling for us. So I hope you feel that. Okay, Ian?
Yes, Linda. Can you briefly tell us where people can get your books from?
Go to the Earthfiles website. I have a lot, about 3,000 in-depth science and environment and real X-Files there. And in the upper right, there is a column, and it has archives, and it has shop, and it has a lot of things. Click on Earthfile Shop, and you can order anything and everything that's there. I've got this beautiful shipment, brand new printing of Glimpses Volume 2 that we should have had 4 months ago, but the COVID problem hurt so many businesses, and that was one of the problems for the delay. But it's there. All of my books, all of my videos are there, and you can order right at the Earthfiles shop. Is that clear? Ian?
Yes, and also from Amazon, from LMH Productions at Amazon.com.
Oh, thank you for, yes. Amazon and Vimeo has also a couple of the videos. Amazon and Vimeo. So they are complementary to the Earthfile shop. Yes, thanks. Another?
Okay, another question. Have you met and talked with Colonel Charles Holt about his experiences?
Yes. More than once. And John Burroughs and I met with Charles Holt, I believe it was the first 3 to 4 days of May in 2013 at the citizens' hearing in Washington, D.C. at the National Press Club. And John Burroughs and Jim Penniston were there about Bentwaters. I was there on several fronts, animal mutilations, human abductions, communicating military voices. And Colonel Holt and John Burroughs and I, we agreed that we would meet on the first evening. And one of the sentences that I've never forgotten from that night was so important because there have been so many conflicts about what really happened at RAF Bentwaters. He said that he knew for a fact that the National Security Agency at Fort Meade, Maryland, within 24 hours of that third night, there was the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th, and John Burroughs was personally involved in the 26th and the 28th. He said within 24 hours, he knew, Colonel Holt knew, which would then presume the deputy base commander would know, Colonel Gordon Williams would know that the National Security Agency, Fort Meade, Maryland, was asked to take over everything that was happening at Bentwaters, deal with the investigations and however they did, which, as far as I know, this is separate from Colonel Holt, I'm giving you, that was his contribution. The NSA took over everything that was happening around the lights, UFOs in Rendlesham Forest. And that many of the men who were there said that they had some kind of pharmaceutical hypnosis. That means that you are put under by something, and then hypnosis is done to find information. And it's surprising of the men that I've talked to how many experience that. So Colonel Holt is one person who had the presence of mind to do that recording in the forest, which is important. And he contributed at least that one piece of evidence. He also told us that he tried to get in touch with a National Security Agency colleague after getting out of Bentwaters, after getting out of wherever else he was, because he knew that the NSA is the one who took over all the investigation. And so he told us that when he finally got back to his life in the Washington area, that he called up this friend that he knew who worked for the National Security Agency. I'm Colonel Holt. I want to come over and I want to see the Bentwaters investigation by the NSA. And his friend said, I can arrange for you to see the files. And Colonel Holt, with a wry grin, said, I got over there. I was taken to his office, and I was expecting to have all these files laid out on a table for me to read. And my friend said, looking at this 3 to 4 foot stack of files, there you are. There are the files. And Colonel Holt said, well, can I sit down here and read them? And he said, oh, no, no, no. You asked to see the files. I'm showing you the physical files. I cannot allow you to read what is in them. That was directly from Colonel Holt, too. That here he was at Bentwaters, but the whole investigation was taken over by the National Security Agency. And years later, when he thought that he had the right and should be able to see what the investigation found, that he wasn't allowed. He had no need to know at the level at which the RAF Bentwaters Woodbridge 3 nights, and they weren't the only 3 nights that lights were there, but those 3 nights in succession, that they were very important to the National Security Agency, and I'm certain to all the other layers who are the ones who have the magic, MAJIC, and Psalm 101 access to information, which very few people do. And that's another problem. We're in a world where only a teeny, teeny little bit, maybe like the Greek gods, actually knew what was going on, actually had big picture. Zeus and Apollo, and we have Zeuses and Apollos. And I think that ultimately, until all humanity is given equal education and rights and food and water and education about how to live and manage on a planet like Earth, until that happens, we're just always going to be the outsiders of tiny, tiny percentages of power brokers who keep humanity basically focused on things that keep us from understanding the true nature of the Earth, which I leave you tonight with this that keeps coming into my own mind. It popped in a couple of weeks ago. Earth is truly like a hotel. It has been a hotel for at least 270 million years. It has been a hotel with different levels to who knows how many life forms. But the Earth is 8,000 miles in diameter, 25,000 miles around, 2/3 deep ocean, and all kinds of technologies and intelligences can choose which part, which environment, which molecules, which atoms they're going to go in and base. And exactly as the DIA analyst told me in December 1999, the reptilians like it warm, and they went into all of the deserts of Mesopotamia. The Greys like to be inside of mountains, and they have done their bases inside of mountains. The Nordics, the humanoids, they like to use the cover of the deep oceans, and their technology is so sophisticated that they can go down through any water. They're like these what we're being introduced to for the first time, craft that can go to outer space, zip around the world, go down into water, come out of water, and they're not affected. And that the large humanoids that can be blonde with blue eyes, or cat eyes, or different colored eyes, or black hair, red hair. I mean, they're probably the Greek progenitors. They like the cover of the oceans on Earth, and it doesn't matter to them whether they are in water or in the basins below the water. That's where they base. Huge, huge basins below the basins of the oceans. And then on the surface, right at the skin of our Earth, Homo sapiens and the life forms that we cohabit with on the surface of the Earth Hotel. I really think that is the truth. I just wish this entire planet could be told the whole truth. And then maybe we would all begin to try to link in our breathing, in our soul, and in our consciousness with the cosmic consciousness that is the light, is the thought that dwells in the light. And once you link there, probably recycling through infinity is guaranteed. I love you guys. I look forward to your emails, to your letters, more questions, and I hope you enjoyed tonight. Let me know. Thank you.
Turn on closed captions for YouTube videos by clicking the white CC button on the lower right. The default language for Linda's videos is English. If you would like to see the captions in another language, click on the white settings button next to the CC button. Select Subtitles CC, and then select Auto Translate. Select a language, and the captions will now appear in that language.
Sort of gone through, and they will hold their heads. I never had a cat do that before. And they'll pull against the comb, helping me get out snarls. And I think it's the best they've ever been.